Thank you, Allison, and good morning, everyone. We're so glad you could join us. A warm thank you goes out to Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright. We're really glad you could kick off this important discussion today. Our theme today, as you know, is Dreaming Up. How can we dream up solutions for long-term well-being of our young adults, our communities, and our cities by creating solutions through governmental action that ensures equitable access to healthcare, education, employment, civic empowerment, and wellness? In our first panel today, we'll be looking at this very question and the transformational solutions by and for young people that our partners are embarking on and dreaming up and implementing. Let me bring in our fantastic moderator for this panel and introduce Nihar Suthar. He is an award-winning writer, storyteller, and podcaster covering inspirational stories around the world. Nihar debuted his first international book, Win No Matter What, with Balboa Press in May 2013. Since then, Nihar's work has taken him to both distant parts of the globe and down strange alleyways. Aside from his storytelling work, he has led product strategy at various multi-million-dollar companies and early stage startups. Nihar, I pass the mic to you.
Thanks, Carrie, and hello, everybody. Good morning. And first of all, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to be here at Adapting with you, and especially the theme of Dream Up is just very exciting. I'm inspired to obviously go further with my dreams. And today in this panel, we're going to be talking about transformational solutions for young adults and basically how we can implement transformational solutions, both in our communities and our circles, and also for ourselves. And we have an amazing panel, 3 people here that we're going to be learning from in the transformational solutions they're implementing in their circles and in their communities and in their jobs. And that will be inspiration for all of us. So I'm really excited. I'm going to introduce the 3 panelists that we have, the amazing panelists. The first person that we have is Dr. Michael Baston, and he's the 5th president of the Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio. He's a national thought leader on the role of community colleges in shaping educational success, supporting regional workforce needs and economic growth, championing diversity, equity, and inclusion reforms, and developing executive leadership teams. Before he led Ohio's largest community college, Baston served as president of Rockland Community College right here in Suthar, New York. And so during his tenure from 2017 to 2022, he led numerous initiatives to spur growth and increase educational pathways. Baston began his career as an attorney representing various educational institutions and social justice organizations. Great to have you with us, Michael. And moving on to the next panelist, we have Reuben Ogbonna. Reuben's a co-founder and executive director of the Marcy Lab School. Marcy Lab is an innovative alternative to college designed for students who face financial barriers or for those that are seeking a unique experience better suited to their career interests. The Marcy Lab School launched in September of 2019, and in just less than 3 years since, they've grown from a 2-person team serving 9 students on a $200,000 budget to over a 20-person team serving 100 students and another 100 alumni on a $4.5 million budget. Quite impressive growth. And they've placed nearly 50 recent high school graduates into software engineering careers at companies such as Spotify, Squarespace, and the New York Times even. Their graduates earn an average salary of over $100,000 per year. The last panelist we have is Wesner Pierre, and he's the CEO of Partnership with Children. A former vice president at Canva Inc. and executive at the Harlem Children's Zone, Wesner brings his passion, creativity, and innovation to bear at Partnership with Children. He's a native New Yorker who grew up in the underserved inner city community of South Jamaica, Queens, and he began his successful career by working in and giving back to that very same community. Wesner started his work in education and youth development as a Beacon Community Center director. And while at Canva, he was able to grow the community center program reach from 3,100 youth and families served to over 13,500 served annually. His work now, which lies at the nexus of youth development and mental health, encompasses 67 schools across New York City, serving over 30,000 youth and families. So an amazing panel. I'm excited to talk to all of you. Thank you to all three of you for being here with us today. I'm going to start off with the first question that we have, which is if each of you can tell us a little bit about your model. What are you currently dreaming up and what are you transforming and how are you going about it? Is that transformation working? Is it working at scale and at a systemic level? And Reuben, you can go ahead and start.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Reuben Ogbonna. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Marcy Lab School. The Marcy Lab School was founded in September of 2019, and it was a response to a problem that was deeply personal to me. Before launching the Marcy Lab School, I was a K-12 educator. I was a math and computer science teacher. I was a dean. I was a coach at Teach for America, New York. And what I saw all across the city was a problem that many folks here, I'm sure, intimately familiar with, which is that young people across our city are graduating high school with a ton of potential, well prepared for the next stop in their life, but oftentimes are met with a post-secondary school education that doesn't provide the resources that they need in order to make that next step into a career that allows them to move into the next economic ladder. So seeing the number of students who were failing to complete college, seeing the number of students who are graduating from college underemployed and in debt, led us, myself, my co-founder, our founding board of directors, to ask a question, which is, what would a better version of college look like for students who are most likely to attend colleges that have a poor track record of ensuring that their students graduate and land great jobs? We responded with the model that became the Marcy Lab School. It's a one-year full-scale academic program, full-time and tuition-free for our students. We major in computer science and software engineering, and on top of our technical skills training, we provide a leadership development curriculum that provides access to race and identity development, financial literacy, civic studies. And our goal is that by the end of that 1 year, our students are competing for jobs that would otherwise require a 4-year college degree from a pretty competitive college. And to date, we've been really proud to say that our graduates have left the Marcy Lab School and landed full-time jobs at companies that any 4-year CS grad would be envious of. Asana, Spotify, the New York Times, JP Morgan, the list goes on. On average, they earn about $103,000 to $105,000 per year in 19 and 20. They graduate without college degrees and without debt. And they start careers that allow them to truly walk towards financial independence. So I'm super excited to share more. And again, happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Reuben. And Michael, would you like to go next and tell us a little bit about your model and what you're dreaming of?
Certainly. I am excited to be with you all today. You know, I grew up in Jamaica, Queens, so I was happy to hear that about you, my brother Pierre. And certainly good to be with all of my friends. For many years, I was vice president at LaGuardia Community College before becoming president at Rockland and now at Cuyahoga. You know, we have always been focused in our work in how we address the issues that young people face. When you think about what's happening in our country today, we are still trying to recover from the challenges of the global pandemic and the health implications for that. We are still trying to address the economic realities that have been connected to that. We are still trying to still address the systematic racism issues that keep folks from living the lives that they deserve. So that's a perfect set of storms that we have been dealing with. And now with the demographic drought, with all of those who are sort of the baby boomers that are moving off the scene and getting out of the positions that are necessary to keep our country moving forward, we are saying we should turn to young people. And we have always turned to young people. But have we put them in the best position to move forward in the ways in which they're interested in moving forward? And so in my work, I'm really focusing on entrepreneurship as a pathway for young people and how education can support their entrepreneurial aspirations as they do dream up. Everyone doesn't want to work for someone else. And that's why you see so many of our young people gravitating toward gig economy opportunities where they're doing DoorDash and Uber Eats and Instacart, because what they recognize is that I don't have to wait to get a check on the 15th and the 31st, or I don't have to wait every other week. I don't have to wait for 2 or 4 years years with the hope of something. In 2 hours after I do an Instacart run, I can have money in my bank account. Well, we know that they're going to need more than just that strategy. And so how do we not dispossess them of the ways that they can rise in America today, but how do we support them as they rise? You don't have to wait for somebody to write you a record deal because you can sell your stuff on iTunes. You don't have to wait for Simon and Schuster to give you a book deal because you can actually go to Amazon and put your book out there. You don't have to look for big manufacturers. You can send your stuff through Etsy. So how we rise in America today is different. Our young people know that, they understand that, and educational institutions have to be poised to support that.
Thanks, Michael. That's very true. I think entrepreneurship is the future. It's obviously been there in the past, but I think it's becoming more and more that young people are looking for these entrepreneurship opportunities. So thank you for that. Very inspirational. And Wesner, would you like to go last about what your model is and what you're dreaming of?
Sure. Thank you for having us here. Really excited about this conversation. And what a great question. This concept of what we're dreaming up and what we're transforming and how. And so, as was shared in my introduction, here at Partnership with Children, our work is really at the nexus of public health and education. And our concept is focused on embedding full-time licensed social workers in schools and high poverty communities across New York City. And the young people in our schools face the insidious effects of poverty. Their family instability, there's homelessness, and often these results that we're seeing from our young folks, what this results in is the toxic stress that can harm children's brain development. It can create lifelong health risks. And so we provide critical mental health services, trauma-informed counseling, and family and community outreach so the students can really learn and thrive in their space. And we know that trauma occurs during childhood. We know that it has implications for development. And so our reaction to that is really focused and rooted in trauma-informed practices that we believe are crucial to addressing the mental health and safety concerns that have been deeply exacerbated by COVID-19. We also know that the national racial reckoning that we've gone through around racial injustice has also increased community violence. And we know that a myriad of adverse childhood experiences that this combination of the violence of the effects of this pandemic, these are things that folks have been looking at for some time now, and we're seeing the adverse effects on our youth. And so when we think about the question of what we're dreaming up and what we're trying to transform, it's awareness and it's support and to our youth and giving them agency to thrive. And so it's critically important. One of the things that we've seen from the pandemic is really leaning in on the critical importance of mining one's mental health. There are many celebrities and athletes that are coming out to talking about this and really bringing and raising that awareness. And we're making sure that we are carrying that message across our schools with our school administrators, our teachers, and we're transforming how folks look at challenge. We're transforming how folks look at young people who are dealing with dysregulation in a classroom, young people who need additional supports in a classroom. We're transforming that thought process and really leaning in with a strength-based approach to that is really rooted and grounded in trauma-informed practices. And our social and emotional learning is rooted and grounded in trauma-informed practices, really looking at what each young person brings to a space and how we can be supportive, making sure that they understand that our services are not a crutch for them, but that we're trying to empower them and give them agency so that they're leaning into healthy protective factors, other family members, their village, if you will, in their life, so that they can really lean into opportunities for social and economic mobility. And so that's what we're really dreaming up and transforming in our spaces and in school spaces across the city.
Awesome. Thanks for that overview. I actually saw a few people in the chat talking about how important it is with mental health, as you know, and as you mentioned, right, especially exacerbated by COVID-19. I think mental health was there before, but of course, like it's really, really accelerated and brought into the spotlight over the past 2 or 3 years. So thank you for what you do as well. As I've heard all of you talk about sort of your models and how you're helping youth, as I'm sure a lot of us know, right, that if we're coming up with solutions for youth, it's incredibly important that the people who are serving the youth are at the forefront of those solutions. And so the next question I have for all of you is really, in the models that you've described, how are the voices of young adults actually being incorporated into the center of those in those transformational solutions that that you're dreaming up? And feel free, whoever wants to go first can chime in.
I can go ahead.
Go for it.
It's at the core of what we do. The voices of our young adults are central to our ability to be able to connect, to be able to form healthy relationships. So we do group counseling, we do one-on-one counseling, and hearing from them is really that's our work, right? And so ensuring that that they're creating healthy relationships, and ensuring that they're building their agency, right? And so we go as they lead, because if we look at our young person, and if we are approaching this from a trauma-informed lens, each young person comes to us with a different challenge. If we're thinking about the restorative practice work that we do, again, we're looking at the individual challenge that our young person has, and so we're really guided by each of our young folks that we connect to, right? And so our goal is to be able to, in some ways, really work ourselves out of a job. We are trying to support our young folks such that they are able to be their best selves, go fly in the world and be great. So if we are effective at what we do, we are not providing a crutch, but we are providing opportunities for them to grow agency, and to be able to be productive members of society, where they understand that challenge is there, trauma is there, historical trauma, institutional systems of racism are there. These are things that are not going to go away tomorrow, but how can they be proactive in leading the story of their life, and making sure that they are the change agent for themselves, and that they are the change agent for their communities as well.
Fantastic, makes sense.
I would just add that in the case of education, we are truly helping students to understand that they are the scholars of their own experience, that they know best what interests them. And the work that we're doing with high schools, as an example, we're giving students in high school college credit to engage in career exploration and navigation. Why? Because if they have a sense of purpose, then they can be motivated with passion. But if we are not asking them what they want to do, who they want to be, if we're not exposing them to the areas of possibility, including entrepreneurship, as I mentioned earlier, because not all young people want to work for somebody. Some want to work for themselves. They may not necessarily know the direction that they want to go in, but we have to give them the frameworks. We have to give them the guidance. We've got to give them the opportunities to experience and to learn, but also to give them credit where credit is due. So we cannot assume, as in the past ways, that the student is the empty sort of shell, and we are going to pour all this knowledge in them. We have to understand that they bring to the table valuable experiences that can inform how we are better at the work that we do in the education space. And so one of the reasons why I've chosen to work in the community college space is because we are democracy's colleges. We are saying, listen, everyone doesn't have $1 million, and they're not going to be dropped off by their family in this idyllic situation to sit under a tree and wait for an apple to fall. Some folks are coming into colleges because they actually see themselves beyond the current circumstance. But how do you help them define the barriers that might be challenges and help them overcome them? Well, if you don't listen to them and just presume that that's the problem.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that you said, Michael. This feels like a moment where seeking out the voices of our youth is more important than ever. Like, we've never seen young people opt out of college at greater rates than they are right now. It's truly a reckoning moment. And so what would we be doing if we weren't asking them, what is it that you need? How is this institution not serving you, and how can we rectify that? We're in, the fortunate moment of being like a founding team. We're 2.5 years old. And so the question that we're always asking ourselves is, how do we see this institution from the ground level with the types of values, with the types of experiences that young people today are calling for? It's a real opportunity for us. We do that both informally with regular programming, seeking feedback from our participants. But two, we're trying to ensure that young people are in the positions of power within the organization to ensure that that continues to stay a part of the culture as we grow. That's what that means is our alumni sit on our governing board of directors. Like, it's a powerful and also humbling experience to have my 19-year-old students approve my salary every year. And then also our most impactful instructors are also our program graduates. It's a beautiful near-peer mentorship leadership opportunity for our 20-year-olds to be teaching our 18-year-olds, and for someone who is just a couple years behind to see what's possible by looking at the face of someone who looks just like them every day as their teacher. And so we hope that if we can continue to scale like actual positional authority of young adults, that we can truly not just seek out their input, but ensure that it's embedded into the program.
And just if I could add one moment to what Reuben just said,
Yeah.
That is why this is also a moment for partnership. For example, there's no reason why a community college in your community doesn't sit with you and say, okay, now let us allow us to offer you academic credit for the things that you've taught them, the things that they've learned, so that they can use that if they later on choose that they want to engage in different levels of education, so that they should get credit for where credit is due. You're giving them all the training, the preparation, you're getting them into the next level of opportunities. But what we have often done is worked in silos. What we've often done is just say, well, you're not doing it the way we say you should do it. And so we don't want to acknowledge the valuable way that you're changing lives. And so we've got to be ready to say, hey, Marcy Lab, love what you're doing. You really are making a difference. Can we give you credit for that? And can we give your folks more currency as they continue to move on whatever the path that they desire? Because that also strengthens us, because then it lets us know, well, what are the ways we can support this new way of learning and engaging and moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've
Thank
heard
you for
all
that,
of you. Yeah, definitely. And I've heard all of you talk about entrepreneurship, basically this reckoning, right? That there's like this whole different realm of people dropping out of colleges, taking their own paths, forging their own paths, right? That's what this is all about. And so I wanted to ask another question too, that's sort of on this same topic, right? That there's a lot of young adults maybe without four-year degrees or kind of forging their own paths, that, as we all know, the labor market and the economy today is kind of in a weird spot, right? Like, there's this labor market where it feels like there's shortages everywhere with, like, gig workers, as Dr. Baston mentioned earlier. Just everywhere you look, there's shortages, and we're seeing increasing prices. And it feels like it's not been like that in a really, really long time. And if you look at the news, we've seen the Fed has committed to continuing to raise interest rates at least maybe even 2 more times through the rest of this year, which, as everybody's been talking about, is going to maybe even dampen wages even more and hiring growth. So as we talk about forging this own path and sort of thinking about entrepreneurship, how do you all think that young adults and entities can sort of capitalize on this window of sort of strange times that we have to basically help their economic prospects? Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Yeah, I guess I'll share a few thoughts. In this country, if you are a high school graduate that has an SAT score that's in the top 25th percentile, but a household income that's in the lowest 25th percentile, incredibly smart from a low-income family, you will graduate from college at a lower rate than someone in this country who graduates with an SAT score in the bottom 25th percentile with a household income in the top 25th percentile. Now, it was news to me to realize that the data suggests that college graduation in this country is more often just a proxy or a marker of like wealth, of things that are outside of the control of our young people. And so the degree to which that we hide wealth creating jobs behind the college degree is more so just perpetuating systemic inequity. And so, yes, we need to position young people to capitalize in this moment, but it's also a time for us to be able to look in the mirror as a society, as like governments, as for-profit corporations, as people who hire talent to say, does this job require a college degree, or is there a more equitable way that I can be assessing talent opportunity for this role.
And I think there are two other very important factors as in alignment with what Reuben is saying. First of all, you have a lot of young people who have older siblings who went away, spent all those years in a four-year institution or other institutions, racked up lots of debt, now moved back home to live in the same room you grew up with. And, and now you're driving Uber Eats just like I am. So how is that the appropriate value proposition for me? It doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's one reality. Second reality is business and industry will have to change the job descriptions and expectations because they don't have enough people to do what needs to be done if we want the country to remain competitive. So while it is important for young people to sort of exercise their agency because they're in a new position, the reality is we have a lot of young people who feel disconnected from the quote unquote hookup. So you have a lot of people young people that's still sitting on the sideline because they don't know how to enter into the place of power that they actually have because of the economic dynamics. So they stand outside of it. So we have a lot of young people that could actually really broker their power and strength because of the labor shortage, but they don't know how to jump in. And so it's incumbent upon us who do have some connectivity with them to actually help the ones that we work with to become those beacon lights, to become those influencers, to bring more folks who are currently disconnected because they don't know how to jump in the rope while the rope is turning.
That's a great point. Wesner, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would say to build on what Michael and Reuben were saying, our job is to make sure that our young folks are healthy, well, and whole, such that they are actually able to jump into that rope, to use Michael's analogy right there. And so we're, so I feel like if you think about the continuum of support needed, I feel like we're sort of at the front end of it, making sure that by the time they get to Michael, by the time that they have opportunities, at Marcy Lab, that they are equipped from a mental health standpoint, and that they have appropriate supports in their lives and have that ability within themselves to be able to be actively engaged in higher education or in the labor force.
Definitely. And I think Dr. Baston and Reuben, you also made points around potentially youth not knowing how to sort of break out of the mold and sort of knowing how to get into the economic workforce and being able to navigate that sort of inequality. And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on essentially how do you think we navigate, or even youth, right? How do they think about navigating this system that I think we can all sort of agree that it feels like it's designed sort of inequitably from the beginning, right? Like as Reuben mentioned, right, colleges sort of feel like it's this marker for wealth that the youth actually don't have any sort of impact on. So I'm curious what some of you think on this.
I think the intentionality of our collaboration must be clear because we are losing them earlier. And so if we are saying, let's now start working on building the bridge from high school graduates on, we've already missed it. The fact is, we have so many young people who went through disconnected educational experiences because of the pandemic that may never come back into the sort of organized, structured, traditional paths that we have known. And so at this point, we have to, as the Marcy Lab, as the community college, as our community-based organizations, we have to be intentional about our strategies of working together and engaging young people at younger ages. When what's going on with career development and navigation, at the third grade level? What's going on when they're an eighth grader? Because if we're not thinking at this point of the level of intentionality of working together that we need to do, we will continue to sort of erode the confidence of young people who will ultimately just disconnect from these systems. Think about all the folks that left education, all the young people that left education through the pandemic because they didn't want to learn online, because they didn't feel that it was something that they could do. If they wanted to be on their phone with other things, why would they use school as the reason to be on their phone to do other things? So we've got to be open to the fact that our levels of collaboration have to be earlier, have to be more integrated, have to be more so, and we can't always see each other in sectors as competitors. If the collective goal is to strengthen young people and to give them the opportunity to build the lives that they deserve, then all of the, and that's why I love this group of Dreaming Up. I dream a world where we're much more connected, and that we're not stepping on each other, but we're supporting and encouraging and enhancing what each other does.
And I would just build on what Dr. Baston said. I think in addition to that, speaking truth to power, right? We say we want to engage them earlier. Our young folks are being raised and bred in a system that is baked in inequality and inequity. And, you know, there is, as has been said throughout our conversation today, there's no better time, right? We have dealt with reckonings on many levels, from the health reckoning to the social justice reckoning. And this is the time for young folks to really speak truth to power, to understand that what the system is and how inequity is baked into that system, right? When they look around in their communities, in our poor communities, communities of color, and you see the health disparities, you see the issues in criminal justice, right? You see the disproportionate impact that COVID has had on our communities of color. And so our young folks need to understand the systems, to continue to lift their voices, and to feel that they have the agency to do that, to be healthy, well, in their minds as well, to continue to lead protests across the country, and to continue to engage the system. And like Dr. Baston said, at a younger age, making sure that we're instilling in our young folks their value, their self-worth. And, you know, again, speaking truth to power and understanding that, listen, here are the things that are going to happen. You know, there will be microaggressions, there will be layers of inequity, but here is how you can be a counterbalance to those things, right? And so we really encourage our young folks through our sort of trauma-informed SEL work to understand their agency, to understand the inequities in the system, and to know that they have a voice, that their voice is powerful, and that now is really their time, right? And so I think that that's key to, you know, again, building on what Dr. Baston said, that's really key, getting them younger and making sure that we instill this agency in them throughout.
Yeah, I agree with everything Wesner said. Would love to echo that point. I think we have a role to play in supporting our youth by telling a different story about what it looks like or what it takes to reach success in this country. Because our kids just want to make us proud. Like, they just want to do right by us. And the story that we've told them for so long is that, like, you will make us proud when you graduate with a college degree. It takes me back to my time as a teacher at a school that espoused a college for all philosophy, where we encourage 100% of our students to matriculate with a college acceptance letter and go off to a four-year school of their choice. There was just a kind of unspoken culture amongst the staff that when an alum would come back to visit after they graduated, you never asked, like, how was school? You asked, like, how are you doing? Because statistically, you know that that student may not be enrolled in school anymore. And that young person carried so much shame about that. That young person, those families felt so much shame at the fact that they often weren't enrolled in school anymore. And so many times I just want to say, baby, that's not your fault. Like, that school was not designed to serve you. When we first started the Marcy Lab School, we got a lot of pushback from people who said, are you saying that these Black and brown kids aren't good enough for college? You know, kind of harken back to the days that, like, led to the College for All movement that was rooted in racism, that said college wasn't for us. And it's almost like we kind of flip that narrative. What we're saying is, no, like, the colleges aren't good enough for our Black and brown babies that are performing in this way. This idea that, like, if a young person is attending a school that historically has not served populations that look like them at the rates that we believe are acceptable, we cannot place all of the blame on those young people. We have to be able to tell a different story, to say that, you know, this isn't the only pathway to success for you, and this is due to no fault of your own. And so that's one part of the work, which is telling a different story, but that in some way that's about kind of telling a story about a world that we wish to be true, that isn't necessarily true in its current form. What I mean by that is, like, we want to tell young people that there are many options out there for you, but the reality is that there aren't enough. Like, we hope to live in a world like that one day, but right now there aren't enough options out there for young people who are really smart, talented, hardworking, and are looking for a pathway to their dreams. And so this is where we come in, where we have to be more creative. We have to partner together. Both the traditional college systems and entrepreneurs like me in the Marcy Lab School have to do a better job of creating more options out there for the diverse set of learners, the diverse set of career interests, the diverse set of backgrounds, not just here in New York City, but across the country.
And I'm excited about this conversation because you have just extraordinary panelists. I think Reuben and Wesner are awesome people. And I'm enjoying it because, for a long time, community colleges got a knock. They said, well, you don't go, that's for people that don't know where they want to go or don't know what they want to do. But let me just tell you, what is not told is that so many people that went to them 4-year colleges, they have college credits because they did AP classes. They did those college credits while they were in high school. And so they did those at the community college, or they started at a community college. And the reality is, we are democracy's colleges. We say, listen, we take the top 100% because everybody can make it in this institution. Now, you're not going to be eligible or effective in every academic program. If you don't like blood, you can't be a nurse, even though your mother told you need to be a nurse. It's just, that's the reality. But whether you go into a shorter term credential, which is what we see a lot of younger people opting for right now, so that they can get that entry-level certification, so that they can get on a ladder. We see in the community college space many declines of young people who are not coming, and in part because they're going into the gig opportunities that are available now. But we do see an increase in those students, those young people, going into short-term training programs, because if I'm getting my CDL license, I can make $70,000, $80,000 driving a truck than going to some of these other programs where I get lots of debt and ultimately no return, and I'm back home with mom and dad, or I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to live because it's so expensive to live in our city. So the reality is, we have to recognize that there are ways that we can help young people have a diversity of options. But if we continue to sort of miss the opportunities like the Marcy Lab and like Partnership for Children and like our community college, we become stranded assets. We're here, we are assets. Our community has to value us as the assets that we can be as well.
Yeah, those are all really, really good points. And we have, as a time check, about 7 or 8 minutes left. And I want to make sure we get in just a few questions from the audience. There have been some questions based on what you all have been talking about. I see everybody's really inspired by the direction and the work that you all are doing. And I think one good question that really came up from the audience that is very related to sort of Reuben's point and Dr. Baston's point, or even Wesner's point, right, around how there's all these amazing organizations and small organizations out there that are just maybe not enough of, or maybe not noticed by the communities. And so what do you think should be sort of the strategic direction or vision of some of the smaller workforce development organizations out there that maybe people don't know exist, but what do you think should be their direction, vision for how they proceed?
Well, you want to be always mission aligned, so you can't partner with folks that have a different agenda than you do. Now, what I think has happened oftentimes is that we think that not-for-profits can only partner with not-for-profits, and that's just not true. You have to partner with whoever's going to ultimately enable your young people to get the best opportunities to succeed. We also have to together begin to look at philanthropy differently. How do we have a coherent and consistent message to our philanthropic partners that will help us to value the importance of partnership to improve outcomes for young people? And if we are not thinking, even as you maybe a smaller workforce, you have to ask yourself the question, who are you not engaged with that can make a difference? Who are you not reaching out to? Because if you just wait to be invited, as a president, I never wait to be invited. I oftentimes invite myself to conversations that I have not been invited to, because at the end of the day, I'm thinking about all of my folks that I'm trying to get educated. And so, I want you who may have the smaller workforce development program or a smaller nonprofit, a smaller school system, whatever, don't wait to be invited. Assert your right to be there as a voice for people based on your mission that you're meant to serve.
Also, I agree with that 100%, Dr. Baston. I think that smaller organizations can serve one of three purposes that do lead to impact at scale. One, the lab in the Marcy Lab School's name is intentional. Like, this is an opportunity to create a new system that other folks can learn from. Like, essentially being lab schools, like, there's something about our model that other folks in other systems can learn from, and we want to be in the position to share our best practices. The second thing is around coalition building, developing an ecosystem. I think understandably so, when folks hear that our graduates go on to earn a ton of money when they graduate, the next question from a certain set of stakeholders is, how quickly can the Marcy Lab School scale to 100,000 students? 100,000. And my answer is never, never. We're never going to serve 100,000 students a year. Just won't happen. Or when you first find me another institution that's serving 100,000 students and serving them all well, then we'll do it. The reality is that is not how education change happens in this country. We don't have a model for that. True change happens in coalitions. It's by seeding ecosystems. We have no right to be in the Rio Grande Valley. We have no business serving, medical careers. That's not where our expertise lies. But there's somebody in the Rio Grande Valley, or there's someone who's inspired by the Marcy Lab School that wants to apply what we've learned to the medical professions, that we want to be in a position to help. And when you aggregate all of the impact that's going to take place, and we're able to take what we've learned, take our infrastructure and help stand up an ecosystem of folks who look like the Marcy Lab School or who are inspired by the Marcy Lab School, then you get to 100,000 students. You get there much more quickly than you think. And then the last piece, which is the most important, is partnering with the established systems. The idea here is that there's so much that has already been happening in our current traditional large-scale post-secondary education systems. I think about the 50% of the Marcy Lab School graduates who have some CUNY credit before they come to the Marcy Lab School. What are the best ways that we can partner with the colleges in our area to catch those students before they fall? How can we share resources, share learning, so that the student doesn't have to experience failure before they find their way to the Marcy Lab School? So all that to say that I think it's often easy to discount smaller or growing organizations because of the fact that scale isn't happening right away, but that's where patience comes in.
A really, really good point. In the last few minutes, Wesner, I know you didn't get a chance to go, but we had one more question from the audience that I just wanted to make sure maybe you could even address, or maybe a few of the others in the last few minutes. One person asked, with some more young folks on the topic of entrepreneurship that we've been sort of resonating our conversation around, with some more young folks looking to be entrepreneurs, specifically things like how is our workforce bridging the gap to our artistic youth, maybe our painters, musicians, poets. So how do you all think about their opportunities? Maybe Wesner, since you didn't get a chance to on the last one, maybe this is one that you might be first to take.
Sure, and I'm going to sneak in a tack on from the last question. I would say for the smaller growing groups, listening, a few things came to mind: listening, action, and intentionality. So listening to the voices that you serve, the young folks, taking action, like Dr. Baston said, get in those spaces, have those conversations, and be intentional about your work. As far as this question around exploration of the arts, part of our work here, partnership with children, we have the Center for Arts Education within our organization. We focus on the arts as healing. We focus on making sure that we provide arts activities for our young folks to be meaningfully engaged. We have a career development program, our CDP program, focuses on young folks who have interest in the arts and pairs them with arts institutions to provide internship programs and opportunities. And so we understand the importance of it, and we're absolutely leaning in and making sure that our young folks are not shy about it, because oftentimes folks think of the arts as a space that doesn't go anywhere, but we're trying to make sure that our young folks see that there are a lot of opportunities, and we're trying to expose them to those.
Awesome. Well, I know we are coming to the end, unfortunately, of our time. I feel like I could have this conversation all day. I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, people are asking amazing questions. You all have incredible points, but we are just about coming up on time. So I do want to thank all three of you for taking the time out of your morning to be here. It's inspiring to all of us youth that, as we've talked about, are the future and are taking different paths and are dreaming up different solutions. And so I look forward to staying in touch with all of you and continuing to make this impact and inspiring youth and dreaming up new solutions in our communities. I think that's one thing that we can all take away from this conversation. So thank you again for all of your time this morning and having this amazing conversation. And next we'll be passing on to Jager, who will be kicking off the next presentation and session. So thank you again, and thank you all for listening in this panel as well.
Thank you for having us. Take care, everyone.